I think we are ready to start. All our presenters are in-house. So allow me to briefly introduce our presenters, but also how we're going to have this session run. We will have presentations by each of them taking 12 minutes. And thereafter, we'll have interactions between you, the listeners, and the presenters. And we will have those interactions according to the presentations, but I'll guide when that time comes. So this afternoon, I'm glad to present to you 5 presenters. The first presenter is Jacqueline. Jacqueline is just next to me on the left. Jacqueline is teaching works at teaching at the right level. She's the research and impact manager in that institution. And she's going to talk to us about mentoring teachers, what needs to change. The second person is Bernadette. Bernadette is a professor at a university. I can't read the name, but she'll tell us when she is speaking. The third presentation is from Belize. Belize is immediate person on my right. She is a research analysis at Latente, and she's worked in research for 8 years and in education as well. She has a passion for actionable research, and possibly that is what she's going to share with us. The fourth presentation is by Richard, and he is an associate professor at the University of Senga. And finally, we have Notesele, who is going to present to us findings on accelerated teaching and learning strategy from Lesotho. So you're all welcome to this presentation. And we're going to start. Jacqueline, are you ready to start? So our first presentation is already on the screen, and it's going to be given by Jacqueline. And Jacqueline, you have 12 minutes. The floor is yours.
Perfect, thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I did not have anything amazing like 8 years of research, but one day I'll have that under my belt. So I'll be presenting on Teaching at the Right Level Africa, the research work we've been doing in Côte d'Ivoire. My colleagues Sabina and Kojo could not be here, unfortunately, but I will be representing them. So over the last few years, the Teaching at the Right Level methodology has been applied in Africa. And we realized that it's not a one size fits all. Just because the methodology worked in one area doesn't mean it will work in all countries. So this research exercise was to unpack what support do teachers really need when it comes to our program, and what change would that have? So we're going to use evidence from our TAL research work in Côte d'Ivoire. Next slide, please. So generally, we know that more children are attending school over the last few years, and this is great that we're making such progress to get the children in the school. But the learning that we hope to achieve, unfortunately, is not happening. So if we look at statistics, next slide. Is it possible for me to just maneuver? Next slide also. There we go. So if we look at statistics, previous slide. Yeah, thank you. If you look at previous statistics, we saw that in 2017, over 80% of grade 2 students in Ghana and Malawi, and over 40 in Uganda and Zambia could not do just a simple word. And this is further shown in numeracy, where we can see that over 50% in several countries could not do simple 2-digit subtraction. So this raised the question of what can be done? How can we touch these children and make sure that they're able to achieve changes and improve their learner outcomes? So here's where adaptive learning methods, such as teaching at the right level, which we call TAL, have been considered as possible solution. And these methods look at teacher-focused, this is a teacher-focused initiative where we look at how can we support teachers to improve learner outcome. So in our research, we investigate ways to improve the support and mentoring that teachers are able to receive. Next slide. Thank you. So before going any further on our research, I think it's good if we just understand what is the teaching at the right level methodology. We shouldn't just assume everyone knows. So the teaching at the right level methodology is a 4-step method. The first step is where teachers assess the learners. And this assessing of learners is a simple oral one-on-one assessment that is able to let the teacher know what is this child's learning level in literacy and numeracy. After that, the teachers are able to group their learners based on their learning outcomes. So each individual student is given the learning outcome based on assessment, and then they are grouped based on that learning outcome. And this is best place for teachers to be able to actually target the learners based on the level they are at so that you achieve the growth you want to see. So based on those learning levels, they're able to use adaptive teaching methods that are specifically designed for the learning levels that the children are in. And this is the no child left behind method, if you think about it. And we don't only focus at the students, but we also want to make sure that our teachers are empowered to deliver the methodology. So we have a mentoring and monitoring support system where teachers are able to be guided, advised, and given feedback on how to best implement the methodology, how to ensure they feel empowered to deliver, and they're able to improve learner outcomes. Looking at Côte d'Ivoire, in Côte d'Ivoire, we have the PEC program. You can see the name is in French, and as a non-French speaker, I will refrain from saying the full name, but any of my colleagues who speak French can say. And the PEC methodology is currently in 1,000 schools with plans to scale up in the foreseeable future. And we hope to embed the program in the national system and use what already exists within government to scale up the program. Next slide, please. So then now we can come back to what is our research. So the agenda for our research is we want to support governments to efficiently implement and scale up the methodology in Côte d'Ivoire. And when we think about what this would look like when it comes to our research at the moment, is we want to make sure that we select and equip the right mentors that are supporting teachers. And even just looking beyond the mentoring, you also have to think about costs. Most African countries are resource constrained. So we have to make sure we can work within the existing resources. So we look at the cost effectiveness of the model and be sure that we are able to fit within the resource constraint. And then lastly is using data to improve learner outcomes. So it's not only beneficial for us to say we're improving learner outcome, but we collect data every step of the way. So using that data to better improve learner outcomes. And our research is a 3-step process. So we did the qualitative exploratory study. So this is just looking at the holistic picture. What is happening in Côte d'Ivoire, understanding the setting, the challenges, the benefits, and then coming up with innovations that we can pilot over the coming years. And then once we are confident that this is the right innovation that will target the problems we are seeing, then we come to a more in-depth study, which is the randomized evaluation. So right now I'm going to speak about the first step, which is a qualitative exploratory study. Next slide, please, thank you. So what is our methodology that we carried out for this? So we did 2 activities when it came to unpacking what is happening in Côte d'Ivoire. The first was we did a qualitative study where we interviewed different school level officials to understand what is happening, what do you need? And then the second step is where we went to school and we actually observed what is going on. So the first step of qualitative was beneficial for us to unpack the minds of the different stakeholders. But it's one thing to just hear from people. You also want to see exactly what's happening. So for the qualitative study, we went to 37 schools and we wanted to unpack how are they delivering the PEC methodology versus their normal schooling. What are the existing mentoring systems and what more do they need? Just understanding from them what are their needs. When it came to observation, we observed 8 schools over several weeks. And within these schools, we observed both what is happening at the classroom, so just general classroom observation. We also looked at what is happening when it comes to mentoring. And then schools do have weekly teacher meetings where all the teachers come together with the headmasters and they discuss what is happening. So we also observed how those meetings are happening because we wanted to understand the entire process of a day in a Côte d'Ivoire school. I'd like to highlight here that when we talk about principals, this can be considered head teachers in other contexts. And when we talk about pedagogical advisors, these are mentors that support clusters of schools, and their work is just to provide support and mentoring for a set number of schools that they observe. And as we talk about facilitators, these are teachers, so we use them interchangeably. Next slide, please. So overall, what we found is this very positive view of the PEC program. Teachers do understand the benefit and appreciate the benefit of the methodology, of the activities and the progress the learners are making. And this extends beyond the PEC program. Even they take what they learn to their normal classes. And as you can see from the graph, they appreciate different aspects of the methodology, from everything within it to specific aspects. And this was great for us to see, because it's one thing for people to tell you when you're just researching in the desk that we like your program, you also want to see what's happening and hear it from the people implementing. But it's not all rose. Is where teachers are meant to create plans for their day-to-day activities for the classroom and use that to guide their progression of learners. So we saw that from a majority of the teachers, around 58%, that this lesson planning is a challenge. And the challenge comes from both lack of material and lack of adequate support. And they said, we need more support, we need more materials. We can't just do this blindly. Give us more help. And if we look at the next slide, when it comes to class activities, we see that the teachers seem to know what to do. They know we're meant to do X, Y, Z, but they don't always know why. And the why is a critical factor whenever you think about a teacher being the change you want to see in a school. Once they know why they do something, it empowers them, it motivates them, and it makes them think beyond even what they're doing. Please click next. And as you can see, they do various activity within the methodology, which shows that they understand that you don't just do one thing. You have to make it interactive and engage children and do different activities to grow different skill sets. But similar to human nature, they tend to repeat activities. We saw that if they like one activity, they'll do it as often as possible until you tell them, wait, these children have learned, can you move on to something else? So it's human nature to repeat what you're good at. So they do repeat several activities that they feel most comfortable and they enjoy. And they sometimes struggle to match an activity, what you're meant to do in a school, with the learning goals that you hope to achieve. If you want a learner to move to understanding words, you should be able to match an activity to that exact goal. So sometimes they struggle with that. Next slide. Next. And then when it comes to grouping within our methodology, the implementation is normally you start with a whole group, the whole class. So you present to the whole class an activity, you make sure they understand, then you go to large groups where you divide the children and engage them in large groups, and then into much smaller groups where children can also engage each other. So it's not that they're learning just from the teacher, but they also learn from each other. And we saw that most classes we observed, the teachers do struggle moving from whole class to actually small groups where children can engage and facilitate and learn with each other. So these 3 activities or these 3 findings showed us that there is something missing. There is more support, there is more we can do. Next slide. And when we thought, what more can we do? We said, let's take a step back and look at the 8 schools we've observed. We have seen some things are working well and some things are not. Why is that the case? So we saw that in 3 schools out of the 8, they were implementing the program very well. And the key pattern that we saw is that the principals in those schools are very motivated and they take the step to motivate their teachers. In 3 other schools, we saw implementation wasn't quite poor, but it was a bit lacking, but it wasn't something to worry about. But in 2 schools, we found that they appear to rarely conduct pair classes. And the pattern we saw here is the principals are not motivated. And as I mentioned before, we did this observation over several weeks. So you go day 1, they're like, oh, we're not having it today. You go day 2, they're like, oh, you came again. Oops, we're not having it today. You go day 3, they're like, how many days will you come so that we actually finally have this class? So it made us realize that this principal, this person at the school who motivates teacher, that's the person you also need to touch. Next slide. So then we sat down and said, so we know the principals are the people we need to look into. And we know that there are these pedagogical advisors who their work is to provide mentoring support and teacher support. How can we tap into those 2? So when we saw that the pedagogical even less, depending on how remote a school is. So that came up as a huge challenge. Then we said, we have the school mentors. Can we use those? So the school mentors who are the principals, they're there every day. They are in schools, they are doing different activities. Can we tap into them? But when speaking to teachers, it became evident that even though they do frequent visits in a class nearly once a month, they don't provide the feedback that the teachers need. It's very rare to have them really engage the children and lead them to making the teachers make the changes. So then we saw that there are these 2 people, very beneficial to supporting a teacher, but then they're not working the way they should, but there is an opportunity to bring them together. Next slide. So then given these challenges, I'd caveat that what we say policy recommendation, we are researchers, so we look at it as research recommendations. We saw that this would be 3 key areas. There's one where we can look at each challenge as it comes and look at ways of addressing them. We've seen lesson planning is an issue, activities is an issue, so each on its own. Or we can take the second step where it's holistically. Let's sit down with this teacher and show them the importance of the methodology so that they completely buy into the program and they deliver very high quality output. And then lastly is, we know the mentors are key. So can we tap into these mentors by having the pedagogical advisors who are beneficial coming to visit more often and supporting them to choose the schools that they visit based on the data and what it can inform them when they're going to schools. And for principals to make them more effective, can we support them in how to give feedback and how to support teachers to ensure that they're changing based on what they see in the classroom. So overall, we saw that there is an element and opportunity to improve teacher support to tap into some of these challenges. So what does this mean? So in conclusion, what we are going to do is we are looking at 3 interventions. We saw that the main people within the structure of our research is the pedagogical advisor, the principal, and the teacher. So for the pedagogical advisors, we are looking at ways to support them with data and hold them more accountable to visit schools so that they're able to visit more schools and the needy schools. And for teachers, it's looking at ways we can restructure their training so that we incorporate the why, not just the how you do things, but why you do things. And then lastly, for principals, having those structured meetings that they have weekly with teachers, being able to incorporate what we see and how to give feedback within those meetings. So we are hoping to tap into these innovations over the next school calendar year 2022 to 2023, and then following that up with an evaluation next year or the year after. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline, for that presentation. A clap for her. We go on to the second presenter, and the second presenter is Bernadette. Can you project Bernadette's presentation? It's on school governance. Okay, I think it's the one. Yeah.
Merci. Notre communication est une présentation des résultats de notre dispositif de remédiation que nous avons expérimenté dans les écoles primaires au Burkina Faso.
Tool that we developed in Burkina Faso.
Cette présentation s'articulera autour de points,
will be done
les buts et objectifs,
with 3 sub-themes.
les résultats et
look at the findings and then the recommendations that arise out of the findings.
En introduction, nous pouvons dire que les
By way of introduction, we can say
sont une réalité que vivent les élèves. Et
the learning process is a reality that children go through.
Pour le monde éducatif et même pour l'humanité. En témoignent les études qui se sont penchées sur la question, ainsi que les rapports nationaux et internationaux. Le système éducatif burkinabé, à l'instar des autres pays du Sahara, n'échappe pas à cette réalité. En effet, les résultats du PASEG 2016 montrent que 64,5% des élèves en langue et 40,8% des élèves en mathématiques n'atteignent pas le seuil suffisant de compétences en début de scolarité. Également, en fin de scolarité, on a toujours 40,8% en langue et 41% en mathématiques qui n'atteignent toujours pas le seuil de compétences suffisant. Ces résultats témoignent de l'existence de difficultés dans les disciplines fondamentales. Difficultés qui sont le plus souvent intrinsèques ou extrinsèques. Heureusement, des dispositifs d'évaluation ainsi que les dispositifs de remédiation interne permettent d'accompagner ces élèves en difficulté. Il faut noter que notre objectif, notre but dans cette recherche, au-delà de contribuer à l'élaboration théorique des connaissances dans le domaine des apprentissages, était de proposer aussi des stratégies pour aider les élèves à surmonter leurs difficultés et améliorer leurs performances. Et l'objectif général était d'analyser l'effet du dispositif de remédiation sur la réussite des élèves en difficulté d'apprentissage, en mesurant l'effet sur le développement des stratégies d'apprentissage, en appréciant la compréhension et en évaluant les performances de ces élèves. L'étude de type expérimental avait comme protocole pré-test, intervention des séances de remédiation et un post-test. Elle s'est déroulée dans la ville de Koudougou, notamment dans la sève de Koudougou 6, auprès de 5 enseignants qui ont bien voulu nous accompagner dans cette expérimentation et de 48 élèves en difficulté d'apprentissage, dont 24 en langue et 24 en mathématiques. Et ces 24 ont été répartis en 2 groupes, dont un groupe expérimental et un groupe contrôle. Pour la collecte des données, nous avons utilisé comme instrument des fiches récapitulatives de performance, un guide d'entretien, des grilles d'observation, une grille d'analyse des styles d'apprentissage, une grille d'analyse des stratégies d'apprentissage et un questionnaire. Pour l'analyse, nous avons utilisé comme logiciel le SPSS 20 et Excel pour la génération des graphiques et nous avons opté pour l'analyse mixte, quantitative et qualitative. À l'issue de cette analyse, nous avons obtenu 2 séries de résultats. Diapo. La première série concernait les séances, les résultats des séances de remédiation qui a concerné que les élèves en difficulté d'apprentissage du groupe expérimental. Donc, en S0, qui était la séance avant les interventions, nous avons constaté que 91,66% des élèves avaient un faible déploiement de stratégies variées et un faible niveau de compréhension. Et à la dernière séance, en S12, 100% des élèves de ce groupe avaient un bon niveau de déploiement stratégique et un bon niveau de compréhension, donc 95,83% ayant un niveau élevé. Nous avons remarqué également que moins le niveau de déploiement était élevé, moins le niveau de compréhension aussi était élevé. Et plus le niveau de déploiement stratégique était élevé, plus le niveau de compréhension était élevé. Et nous en avons déduit une corrélation entre le niveau de déploiement stratégique et le niveau de compréhension. La deuxième série de résultats concernait les tests, pré-tests et post-tests. En pré-test, pour ce qui concernait la variable déploiement stratégique, nous avons pour les 2 groupes, groupe expérimental et groupe contrôle, 91,66% des élèves qui avaient un faible déploiement varié de stratégie, mais au post-test, pour le groupe expérimental, 100% des élèves avaient un bon niveau, avec 91,66% ayant un déploiement stratégique varié élevé, contre 12,5% des élèves du groupe contrôle ayant un bon niveau et 87,5% ayant toujours un faible niveau de déploiement stratégique. Pour la variable compréhension, 87,5% des élèves du groupe expérimental et 91,6% du groupe contrôle avaient un faible niveau de compréhension. Au post-test, 100% des élèves du groupe expérimental avaient un bon niveau de compréhension, dont 91,66% un niveau élevé, contre 12,5% des élèves du groupe contrôle ayant un bon niveau de compréhension et 87,5% ayant toujours un niveau faible de compréhension. Pour la variable performance, 87,5% des élèves du groupe contrôle, du groupe expérimental et 83,66% du groupe contrôle avaient de faibles performances au pré-test. Au post-test, 100% des élèves avaient un bon niveau, avaient de bonnes performances, avec 91,66% ayant des performances élevées, contre 12,5% des élèves du groupe contrôle ayant de bonnes performances. À l'issue de ces résultats, nous sommes parvenus aux conclusions suivantes. L'approche métacognitive de la remédiation cognitivo-pédagogique a permis aux élèves du groupe expérimental de faire des progrès significatifs en déploiement de stratégies. Ensuite, un entraînement métacognitif permettait une prise de conscience de son fonctionnement cognitif et permettait d'améliorer et la compréhension et les performances scolaires. Et enfin, nous avons conclu qu'il existait une corrélation entre les trois variables, le niveau de déploiement stratégique, le niveau de compréhension et la performance. Au regard des résultats probants de l'expérimentation, nous avons formulé quelques recommandations. La première recommandation est relative à la formalisation du dispositif dans un manuel d'utilisation facile pour les enseignants. Et c'est un projet qui est en cours à notre niveau. Et nous pensons qu'avec l'appui du ministère de tutelle, nous pourrons aussi former les enseignants, que ce soit au niveau initial ou continu, à la pratique de la remédiation cognitivo-pédagogique. Également, nous avons souhaité que les programmes d'enseignement et les emplois de temps des classes soient revus pour rendre effectives au moins 2 séances de remédiation par semaine. Enfin, nous recommandons que la pratique de la remédiation cognitivo-pédagogique soit généralisée, mais en commençant par une phase pilote qui prend en compte les matières instrumentales, puis qui vont s'étendre aux autres disciplines progressivement. C'était ce que nous avons à partager avec vous. Merci pour votre attention.
Thank you very much, Bernadette, for the clear presentation. And that takes us to the third presenter, who is Belize Kangabe, speaking to us on more than research participants. Can you put her past slides? It's on already.
Thank you very much. I hope people can hear me well. I'm presenting on Rwandan teachers' views on how to improve teaching quality and address inequity in learning outcomes relevant to the title of the paper you just mentioned. Thank you very much. So this presentation is done by myself, but I'm not alone. My colleague Lili Shima, who was not able to come here, is also an author to this paper. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So this paper describes the feedback and recommendations of our teachers to a rigorous study that we did within the context of the Leaders in Teaching initiative in Rwanda, so in 2019 and 2020, but also it looks it with some recommendation for policy. We have conducted this research as Laterite, where I am from, but also with the Real Center, which is the Research for Equitable Access and Learning at the University of Cambridge. So both Laterite and the Real Center are the learning partners on this initiative. But let me tell you a little bit more about the initiative. If you could move to the next slide, please. Yes, the previous one, sorry. Si nous pouvons aller à la diapo précédente, s'il vous plaît. Thank you. So, celle précédente, donc la numéro 3, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Oui, oui. So what is the Leaders in Teaching initiative? It's a MasterCard Foundation initiative to raise the quality of teaching and learning in Rwanda's secondary schools, lower secondary schools. So I was mentioning before, Laterite and the Real Center are the learning partners on this initiative, responsible for generating evidence that can not only support implementing partners to improve their programming, but also generate learning about teacher and learning outcomes, and particularly understand the perceived impact of the program or the initiative on school culture and classroom practices, and also understand the impact of COVID-19 on education and the links between school leaders, teachers, and students. If I could have the next slide, please. Yeah. So this initiative, so we carried research on this initiative in 2019 and 2020 with a sample of 358 secondary schools. So we interviewed over 350 school leaders and 1,800 STEM teachers. We also surveyed over 4,000 secondary 3 students, and most of those schools, 91% of them, were located in rural areas. On the next slide, please. So why have these teacher workshops? It was really important for us to go back to the field and share with teachers the results of our studies, especially as we had been really, we went several times to conduct research with the teachers, and they were really keen to understand what had come out of these studies. So we organized 5 in-person workshops in 5 different districts of Rwanda with 122 teachers overall, as well as school leaders, as well as sector education officers. And at the workshops, we were looking for participants' interpretations of the findings, as well as policy recommendations, then that we could then feed back to policymakers whom we met in September. Sorry, I forgot to mention that those workshops took place in June of this year. Now, so we discussed 3 main themes. The first one is what makes a good teacher. For this, the data is coming from 18 focus group discussions that we've conducted with over 96 school leaders and classroom observations in 97 S3 classes. So we first sought to understand what was their own understanding of what is a good teacher. And for them, that is someone who has passion, is motivated, is punctual, is a role model, and has good cultural values, and particularly Rwandan values. And we also sought to understand with them some of those practices that were less practiced in the classrooms according to our observations. So fewer teachers were identifying student successes or positively acknowledging good behavior. Few of them were giving student choices during lessons, and very few were acknowledging student efforts and why it's important. For instance, to give positive acknowledgement, we know that it helps develop student self-confidence, self-regulatory skills, and interest in a topic. Also, why is it important to give student choices? We were observing S3 students, so those who are between 14 and 15 for the most part, and who are adolescents are growing to become adults. So it's important that they're exposed to choices, especially as they become adults and become more independent. Why it's important to acknowledge student efforts. It supports their perseverance and also motivation to keep on learning. We also asked them, so why is it that teachers are not applying these practices? They share that the teachers share that they can apply these good practices, but there also is a bit of lack of time, especially as they are often leading large classes. They also feel rushed to deliver the curriculum, which is quite vast, and they only have 40 minutes at any time to deliver a lesson. So the level, and also they mentioned that the levels of support needed by students differs. They also need additional time to support slow learners and to revise and align the curriculum with the level of students and time allocated. If we could move to the next slide, please. So we also asked teachers then how to improve the teaching environment and particularly teaching quality. So they recommended revising the curriculum, the teaching timetable, which is quite heavy for them, and the balance of teachers' administrative duties to make sure that they really focus on those teaching and learning activities. They also recommended building more classrooms to address this issue of large class sizes, which do not enable them to follow up with every student as well as they would like to. And also recommended some investment on infrastructure, providing electricity, internet in small classrooms, textbooks and laptops, and also having counselors in their school to take on the task of career guidance, but also counseling students. If we could move to the next slide, please. Second topic that we covered in those workshops is gender inequalities among Rwandan school leaders and teachers. This data was drawn from interviews with 350 school leaders and 1,800 STEM teachers, as well as phone surveys we conducted over the school closures with 300 school leaders and 300 of their STEM teachers. So we noticed that there are some significant gender disparities in the number of school leaders and STEM teachers. So only 1 in 5 school leaders is female, only 1 in 4 STEM teachers is female. Also thinking about who was really prepared to take on distance teaching and distance learning before the pandemic, only 1 in 10 female teachers had experience with online teaching or learning prior to the pandemic versus 2 in 10 male teachers. And even in terms of teachers' practices, there were differences across the genders. So some female STEM teachers were more likely to encourage autonomy in the classroom by letting students take roles in the classroom, giving them choices. And that was observed in 70% of female-led classrooms versus 58% of male-led classrooms. We also prompted the teachers to give us their views on what causes the gender gaps in STEM teaching and also in school leadership. So they mentioned that, first of all, fewer female students take on STEM in secondary school. So this affects the pipeline of potential STEM teachers. There's also a lack of incentive to study STEM. And also there is a cultural bias against women in leadership. And also something that is a bit more in the family sphere, female STEM teachers, even if they get a position, or female school leaders, if they get a position, if they are placed in places far from their areas of residence, they are unlikely to go and take on these jobs. Right. On the next slide, please. So we asked them as well, how can we improve the gender balance and the gender balance in STEM teaching as well as in school leadership. So they recommended organizing national campaigns about gender equality, placing female STEM teachers and school leaders in areas close to their residences, encouraging female teachers to pursue higher qualification, and ensuring gender diversity in school leadership. So for instance, if you have a male head teacher, let's have at least a female deputy head teacher. Yes, and also in terms of ICT tools, making sure that female STEM teachers are trained on them, but also giving priority when there is availability of CPD programs. Next slide, please. Right, and the third topic that we addressed with teachers was the link between students' characteristics and the learning trajectories. Just covering this very briefly, we noticed that there is a gender gap and also other type of gaps according to the student characteristics that were noticed when we got students to actually sit a numeracy assessment. So for instance, in schools of excellence, which are the best resource schools, we don't see any gender gap. However, in rural schools, for instance, we saw that girls performed less well than their male counterparts. And also when we look at the wealthiest fifth of households from which students were coming from, there is a small gender gap of 2 percentage points. But when we look at, when we look at the wealthiest fifth of household, there is a small gender gap of 2 percentage points. But when we look at the least wealthy fifth of households, there is a gender gap of 4 percentage points. So just to finish up and conclude, so how can we improve equity for positive learning outcomes? So what was recommended was to promote the collaboration between better resourced and less well-resourced or equipped schools, reframe existing procedures to allocate students to schools of excellences, introduce initiatives that promote STEM teachers, and provide training for teachers and parents on the equal value of girls' education. And to finish, it was important for us to engage with educators on the policy recommendations that they wanted to be fed back to policymakers. And this enabled us to close the loop between programming, research, dissemination, and policy. And I think this is what we've been able to achieve with those workshops. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Belize, for the highlighting the issues in Rwanda, especially the gender issues that seems to cut across both student and staff. We now move to the fourth presentation, which is by Richard Sharon. The floor is yours, 12 minutes.
Merci de me donner l'occasion ou le privilège de vous présenter notre projet de recherche qui s'intitule « Réinventer la gestion ». Alors, je suis originaire du Canada-Québec, comme on dit en francophonie, mais mon travail essentiel est avec l'Université Saint-Gord-Alexandrie, l'université créée par la francophonie pour contribuer au développement africain. Dans le cadre de ce symposium, je suis surtout ici en tant que webmestre du réseau Édugestion, qui est un réseau constitué au départ des anciens étudiants, donc des alumni du Master 2 en gestion des systèmes éducatifs, offert en formation à distance par l'Université Saint-Gord-Alexandrie, mais qui s'est ouvert peu à peu à l'ensemble des gestionnaires de tous les pays où nous travaillons, qui sont intéressés à la formation des gestionnaires et à la professionnalisation des gestionnaires. Alors, pourquoi réinventer la gestion? Dans une recherche précédente, diapositive, s'il vous plaît, merci, nous avons constaté l'importance qui est accordée à l'impact de la qualité de la gestion sur la réussite éducative par l'ensemble des intervenants internationaux, que ce soit l'UNESCO, la Banque mondiale, la Confumène, l'OIF, l'ADEA, ils affirment tous l'importance de la gestion dans la qualité de l'éducation. Et nous pouvons constater dans des recherches récentes que ce facteur important de la gestion de l'éducation est souligné dans beaucoup de recherches, disons, à l'extérieur de notre propre aire de travail. Donc, dans nos environnements, nous, les projets et les recherches en gestion sont difficiles à accéder. Et nous constatons que malgré toutes les affirmations de l'importance de la gestion, les organisations internationales et même les ministères investissent peu dans la formation et dans la professionnalisation de leurs gestionnaires. Donc, diapositive, s'il vous plaît. Le but de notre intervention, de notre recherche, c'est de contribuer à l'amélioration de la gestion. Et les objectifs, donc, c'est de dresser d'abord un bilan de la mise en œuvre des stratégies qui ont été proposées par la Confumène à la suite des assises francophones de la gestion scolaire tenues en 2006. La Confumène, lors de sa 56e session ministérielle, a adopté le mémorandum et cadre d'action sur la gestion scolaire qui contenait des suggestions, des stratégies d'amélioration de la gestion. Alors, nous avons pensé que 15 ans après, il serait intéressant de voir jusqu'à quel point ces stratégies ont été mises en œuvre par les ministères de l'Éducation. Donc, après ce bilan, nous avons l'intention de développer une stratégie hybride et systémique de développement professionnel de nos membres, en espérant qu'elle sera diffusée à plus large échelle. La méthodologie de notre recherche, donc, c'est une recherche action participative. Nous avons consulté nos membres dans différents pays sur le statut des gestionnaires dans leur pays. 10 équipes nationales ont produit des recherches sur le statut des gestionnaires dans leur pays et nous avons publié leurs travaux dans notre revue associative. Nous avons consulté nos membres sur leur formation et leur socialité, c'est-à-dire les relations sociales qu'ils établissent à l'intérieur de leur profession. Et nous allons ensuite vérifier auprès des gestionnaires en poste si les orientations décrites dans les textes des ministères sont effectivement mises en œuvre dans la réalité. Ensuite, dernière étape de notre recherche, nous allons utiliser des outils développés par le système d'analyse sociale développé en coordination avec le CRDI pour déterminer notre stratégie d'intervention par la suite. Alors, diapositive. Les stratégies de la Confumène, vous les voyez à l'écran, elles sont nombreuses. Nous les avons synthétisées en 3 items. Premièrement, le statut. Deuxièmement, la formation des gestionnaires. Et troisièmement, leur socialité. Alors, diapositive, s'il vous plaît. Donc, je ne décrirai pas, faute de temps, chacun de ces items. Je pense qu'ils sont assez faciles à comprendre. Les résultats de notre recherche sont les suivants. Au niveau du statut des gestionnaires, l'identité et la description des tâches des gestionnaires est incluse maintenant, a été précisée par le ministère de l'Éducation dans la grande majorité des pays. Cependant, il n'y a pas de profil de compétences accessible à nos membres, aux gestionnaires en poste, même si, sous mandat de la Confémen et de l'OIF, nous avons développé des profils de compétences dans certains pays, mais ils sont disparus. Dans la majorité des pays, il n'y a pas de statut distinct pour le gestionnaire. Ce sont des enseignants qui sont affectés à des postes de gestion, mais qui n'ont pas nécessairement de permanence et de continuité dans ce travail. Le processus de nomination, de façon générale, est bien défini dans les textes, mais c'est souvent un processus complexe, assez centralisé et hiérarchique auquel on accorde la primauté de l'ancienneté sur la compétence et avec une permanence incertaine et susceptible d'ingérence ou d'influence politique. La valorisation des gestionnaires est surtout financière et on a noté seulement dans un pays, sur tous les répondants, qu'il y avait une façon de valoriser, de reconnaître le travail des gestionnaires. Diapositive suivante. Les résultats au niveau de la formation des gestionnaires. 62% de nos membres nous ont dit que leur formation initiale était inexistante ou insuffisante. 70% nous disent que la formation continue est aussi inexistante ou peu fréquente et que de façon générale, leur formation continue ne leur est pas transmise par le système lui-même, mais par des sources externes, donc par des projets de PTF ou n'importe quoi, et de sources personnelles, donc des cours suivis personnellement en ligne, parfois sur Internet. Le résultat maintenant au sujet de la socialité des gestionnaires, 64% ne font pas partie d'une association professionnelle et pour ceux qui le font, la moitié sont dans des syndicats et l'autre moitié sont dans des associations professionnelles. Mais dans leur système, une faible proportion des gestionnaires fait partie d'une association et les gestionnaires sont rarement ou jamais consultés par les autorités hiérarchiques pour le développement de la qualité de la gestion. Au sujet maintenant du leadership, nous avons fait une brève enquête en parallèle avec notre enquête principale sur le leadership des chefs d'établissement et des gestionnaires. Ils ont tous admis que le leadership administratif et pédagogique est très valorisé dans leur système, mais qu'ils n'ont pas l'autonomie et les ressources nécessaires pour assurer ce leadership. Alors, nos recommandations. La première recommandation s'adresse aux gestionnaires. Il ne s'agit pas toujours de demander des choses, mais de s'engager soi-même dans un développement professionnel. Donc, nous engageons les gestionnaires à s'engager eux-mêmes dans leur développement professionnel. Dans ce contexte, diapositive suivante, s'il vous plaît. Dans ce contexte, oui, suivante, s'il vous plaît. Nous avons décidé, nos associations nationales ont décidé de se créer vraiment des associations nationales et elles sont en train d'être créées dans 12 pays actuellement. Alors, je peux en faire la liste, au Bénin, au Burkina Faso, au Cameroun, en Côte d'Ivoire, au Congo, au Gabon, en Haïti, au Mali, en Mauritanie, au Niger, au Tchad et en Tunisie. Il y aura bientôt des associations professionnelles de gestionnaires si notre projet aboutit d'ici la fin de l'année 2022. Alors, nous voulons et nous souhaitons que les gestionnaires assument eux-mêmes un leadership à l'intérieur de leur profession. Notre deuxième recommandation, c'est que les ministères eux-mêmes qui se sont engagés lors de la session ministérielle de la Confémen à mettre en œuvre les stratégies proposées par la Confémen, que ces ministères les mettent en œuvre, notamment au niveau de la formation des gestionnaires, qui est très peu présente dans les systèmes, et aussi dans l'utilisation des ressources humaines qui sont déjà présentes dans les ministères ou dans les systèmes. Par exemple, les centaines d'experts en gestion et en ingénierie de formation qui ont été formés dans le cadre du master de l'Université Saint-Gall. Et Une autre recommandation, c'est que l'Université Senghor elle-même diffuse des formations dans ses campus nationaux en présentiel ou bien en formation à distance, que l'AUF, donc l'Agence universitaire de la francophonie et le CRDI, fassent la promotion de la recherche sur la gestion parce que ça nous manque terriblement dans nos systèmes, que l'IFADEM, dont on a déjà parlé dans le cadre de ce symposium, puisse augmenter son offre de formation des gestionnaires. L'IFADEM forme déjà dans certains pays les gestionnaires, surtout les directeurs d'école primaire et les principaux de collège sur certains thèmes. Donc, on pourrait augmenter cette offre de formation. Et il nous paraît essentiel que les organisations internationales s'engagent dans une approche hybride, comme l'a été suggéré par Mamadou Ndoye, l'ancien secrétaire exécutif de l'ADEA. Donc, ne pas toujours travailler en top-down, mais travailler aussi avec les forces au niveau local et au niveau de base. Donc, adopter aussi une approche ascendante pour aider, par exemple, les enseignants et les gestionnaires à influencer l'évolution du système et l'amélioration de la qualité de la gestion. Enfin, il est proposé que les organisations internationales tiennent de nouvelles assises de la gestion pour renouveler leur engagement et pour réinventer la gestion des systèmes éducatifs. Alors, si on le fait, ce sera déjà une période de 20 ans qui se sera écoulée depuis les dernières assises de la gestion. Nous pensons qu'il est temps justement de se réengager. Nous avons besoin d'un leadership international dans la promotion de la gestion et de la professionnalisation des gestionnaires. Bon, il me reste une minute. Un petit mot sur la formation des gestionnaires. C'est un sujet complexe. Évidemment, on ne peut pas demander, ou je crois qu'il n'est pas évident de demander qu'il y ait une formation initiale, par exemple, de niveau universitaire ou très longue dans les différents pays, mais nous proposons d'adopter ce qu'on appelle la méthode 70-20-10. Les recherches en développement organisationnel démontrent qu'au nord comme au sud, dans le domaine de l'éducation ou dans les autres domaines d'intervention sociale, les gestionnaires de façon générale, apprennent seulement pour 10% de leurs apprentissages en gestion dans des activités formelles, des activités de formation, des séminaires ou des choses comme ça, pour 20% dans des apports sociaux. Donc, ils apprennent ensemble par des consultations, par l'observation de gens compétents dans la gestion et par 70% dans des pratiques réflexives acquises en cours d'emploi. Donc, si, par exemple, les ministères et les PTF ou les organisations veulent influencer l'ensemble de la formation des gestionnaires, ils peuvent utiliser le 10% qu'ils peuvent mettre en place pour aider les gestionnaires à acquérir des compétences dans la formation sociale. Donc, comment se former les uns les autres et comment utiliser la pratique réflexive pour apprendre à bien gérer. Donc, nous proposons la formation par les pairs et la formation à l'utilisation de stratégies d'apprentissage par la pratique réflexive. Suivante. Bon, rapidement, nous proposons de passer d'une vision hiérarchique à une vision systémique de la gestion parce qu'actuellement, la gestion est trop fortement hiérarchisée. Rechercher des points d'amplification. Dans la théorie des systèmes, les points d'amplification, ce sont ceux qui sont capables d'influencer plusieurs éléments du système. On ne peut pas changer un système en influençant qu'un seul élément. Et dans ce contexte-là, les gestionnaires sont bien placés parce que, de façon générale, ils peuvent influencer plusieurs éléments du système. On propose de passer du leadership qui est parfois considéré comme individuel à un leadership communautaire ou ce que Andrew Mitzberg appelle le communityship. Alors, les directeurs d'école ou bien les gestionnaires doivent être les animateurs de leur communauté plus que des chefs. Le leadership latéral ou systémique donc, que nous proposons, c'est la clé de la résilience des systèmes éducatifs selon une recherche qui vient d'être publiée par l'IPE. Et nous savons que cette résilience est très importante dans nos conditions actuelles. En définitive, le message final que nous voulons vous transmettre, c'est que améliorer la gestion, c'est améliorer le système éducatif. Et pour améliorer l'éducation, il faut améliorer sa gestion. Peut-être un dernier petit commentaire. j'ai noté que dans d'autres pays que de ceux dans lesquels nous travaillons, il y a des recherches sur la gestion. Maybe a word to our English, Anglophone and Lusophone participants. If you can share your data and your research on management, we would be very happy to receive it. Et nous espérons que les gestionnaires, même ceux qui sont présents ici, s'engageront dans ce projet de professionnalisation de la gestion dans nos pays. Merci de votre attention.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We now take on the last presentation from Lesotho. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I am Mtwaisile Muhlomi from Lesotho. I give my services to the National Curriculum Development Center in Lesotho. Luckily, I'm not alone. I came with the CEO Curriculum and Assessment and the Director, Lesotho Distance Teaching Center. The National Curriculum Development Center where I am working, it's actually developing the curriculum from early childhood to grade 12, secondary. The Curriculum Development Center follows the integrated method or the integrated approach of curriculum development. This integrated approach is informed by the Lesotho, is informed by the curriculum and assessment policy of 2009 in Lesotho. But recently we have just reviewed and reinforced it, and we have developed Lesotho Basic Education Curriculum Policy 2021. Let me get to the presentation then, which is the strategy I'm coming to present. The strategy happened during COVID-19 pandemic. The other processes of the strategy have been done, but others they are still going on in the process. The strategy was developed because of two reasons. There was a need during that time of opening schools. Open school, that was the first reason, to open schools in a secure and safe environment during COVID-19. And the second one was the need to save or salvage or recover the lost academic time. I think you can go on as long as I have explained the strategy. Here, I'll give just a few background of Lesotho. Lesotho is landlocked. It has only 30.355 square kilometers. The population is 2.3 by July, it was 2022. And it has 7 levels of education. Affectionately, it is called the kingdom in the sky, maybe because of its altitude. It has those 7 levels which I have mentioned. Level 0 being the ECCD, early childhood, and level 7 being higher education. You can see that those numbers are the institutions in each level. You can see that at primary is level 1, we have so many primaries, and you can see at level 4 and level 5, how are we doing? And that has made most people are literate, but few have tertiary education in Lesotho. Next slide, please. The thing is, what actually the background towards this strategy? The background is stands like this. We all know, those are the dates at 2020, how the strategy came about. The thing is, the schools were closed. Were closed because who announced COVID-19 as pandemic emergency? Then we all know about the lockdown. In Lesotho, luckily, we had what we call National COVID-19 Secretariat, which we call it abbreviated as NACOSEC, which was the body responsible for seeing that all the COVID-19 measures are dealt with. And that caused the school were closed because NACOSEC ordered the schools to be closed. We only not faced that reason in Lesotho or that challenge. There was also another challenge on top of that. In 2018 and 2019, we have lost an ample time of school calendar, whereby we were having teacher strikes. That means we had two problems. 2019 and 2018, we lost a lot of time. Learners were not being taught because teachers were in strike. They were in intervals. But also we had that problem of COVID-19. That is why the formulation of the strategy with those two rationales. Another slide, please. I think I have touched a bit to a problem, but the problem extends more to that, more than that. The closure of schools had made a big challenge, not only to families, but also to educators who care about learners' education. Because by the time learners were at home, there was an alarming rate of unintended pregnancy of teenagers. There was also sexual exploitation. You would listen to a radio, you would hear what you don't want to hear. There was also numbers going up of early childhood marriage. And all this, as educators, hence the strategy, all this gave us, we foresee a high dropout rate, which, and even at the moment we still have, but with all those problems, we could foresee that here we are heading to a high dropout rate. Then another slide, please. The objective, I think I have mentioned the objective already. The objective of the strategy was just simple: safer and secure reopening of schools during COVID-19 pandemic and beyond that. But it was not only going to be safer. We were not only looking to open schools safely. We are also looking at how are we going to teach these learners when they are there at schools during this time and beyond this time of COVID. We looked, I think there I was touching at the methodology. Then the minister called the senior management. The senior management was made, my director was there, NCDC director was there, was part of the senior management and other team of the senior management. The other group, another slide, please. I think I'm on the methodology, how the strategy was formulated. It was formulated, the minister called the tax team and the senior management was called the tax team. The tax team was called because it was coming to advise the minister. Then it advised her. Actually, the task team developed what we call the tax team subcommittees. There were 11 task team subcommittees. I will only talk to the teaching and learning modalities subcommittee. There were a lot of subcommittees. Other subcommittees were the consumer subcommittees, the means of communication, management of communications, because, you know, during that time, there were need of consumables like the sanitizers, the masks. Then there were committees which were responsible for each of those activities which would be needed during that time. But for now, I will talk to the subcommittee of teaching and learning, which developed the strategy. The subcommittee was formed by the NCDC senior management. I think we are five of us. And not only the NCDC, we were also other, I think another slide, sir. Yes, that's the methodology. There were inspectors too. There were education. No, I think that is where we were sharing the information. No, yes. Yes. There were other teams, yes. In the subcommittee of teaching and learning, we had NCDC, we had the National University of Lesotho curriculum specialist, we had selected district education managers, we had, I think, even other inspectors. They were part of the subcommittee. We're looking for a team which consolidates all the departments, but at the same time, we were afraid to take more. And the subcommittee give the information or train the inspectors, special education, examination council of Lesotho. I think we did have a member at the subcommittee. The subjects advisors and district resource teachers, which are the DRTs. The subcommittees trained those people. Those people, there were two reasons why the subcommittee started with these people. They are the ones within the Department of Education, and it was for information sharing, also trying to refine the strategy. After that training, then the trainers, there were trainers. After the subcommittee has refined the strategy with that group, there were trainers. There were district education managers, DEMs, inspectors, DRTs, and selected teachers. For primary, there were 2,260 primary teachers who were selected to be trainers. For secondary, there were 200. All the district education managers were selected as trainers, and inspectors and DRTs. And these inspectors, this group of trainers were trained by the subcommittees, by the subcommittee. Then that group trained all districts. There was a cascade method. They trained all teachers in all districts. These teachers, when they were trained, the NCDC, that subcommittee, randomly attended the trainings, spot checked. In spot checks there, that is where we did the unobstructive observations. And we had the interviews. We had the interviews with both the trainers and the trainees. The rationale behind that was that we need to understand how they feel about the structure, how they are going to apply it contextually where they are going as trainers. And for trainees, when we were interviewing them, we wanted to have the feel whether are we swimming in the same pool? Are they still training what we think we are intending them to train? Then we had 20 sample of primary teachers, and we have 10 for secondary. How actually did this strategy work out? The strategy, actually, as the subcommittee, we looked at the strategy. We looked deeply, not as a strategy, we looked deeply at our syllabus from grade 1 to grade 12. As I have said, we are developing that. What we were looking at there, the thing is, we scrutinize it to see the objectives of our syllabus at each level. And we also wanted to address, yes, we were looking for the objective of the syllabus for each level. And our syllabus, as I said, is integrated. It is spiraling. Then we also wanted to explore that spiraling. The thing, we used those spiraling and another thing which we called attainment target. Attainment target is when we were looking at all the syllabi, we would look at the syllabus at each level and we would say, what are these concepts trying to attain? Then we'll take more than one concepts from different levels. Then we'll see what are they trying to attain. Then the learners will be taught the attainment target that rather than the individual concepts which they were taught when it was a normal time. The thing is, we did grades. That is how the slide shows how we grouped them. Grades 1 to 4, we concentrated only on literacy, numeracy, and life skills. That was hammered there at those grades. And grade 5 and grade 6 were merged. Then when we merged them, that is when we looked at the same concepts, and we merged the same concepts. Within those same concepts, we looked at the attainment target. Then we focused only on the attainment target. What we did is, if I can give an example of numeracy and mathematical, which is maths, at those lower grades, we have where we teach learners a pictograph. And the attainment level at grade 2 or grade 3, the learner starts at pictogram, but the intention is for a learner to know a bar graph. Then a teacher will not be teaching the learner a pictogram this time. The learners will be taught the bar graph. And with the concepts which are learned at the bar graph, they could do the pictogram. Because pictogram actually is the complexity of in fact, the bar chart is the complexity of the pictogram. Then the learners will be given the assignment on pictograms. Then the complex things were done in class, while the simple things which, when we have merged, they were done by learners at home, given as assignment. That is actually what we did with the strategy. I think with other grades were treated alone because we had our challenges already even before COVID with such grades. Then we wanted to separate them from other we did not integrate we did not mesh. But with grade 11, that was our final examination year, then also it was treated alone. Each one, we had the rationale why we are doing it like that. I think done with I think I've explained how the strategy worked. Then I can go to the findings. First, we were sponsored by the World Bank and UNICEF, and mostly the funding, rather than all other strategies like consumables, and the most funding was given to us to develop teaching and learning. And we did have radio lessons and TV lessons. Even before COVID, we did have radio lessons. Then now, because it was COVID, we reinforced them, because at LDTC, I said I moved the director LDTC here, distant teaching. They are doing teaching with the radios. Then during this time of COVID, we reinforced it. Even the mainstream did join them. We trained teachers, teacher trainers, which were 220 primary and 56 at secondary. These teachers, the rationale behind training them was for them to be helping with remedial and the assignments. They were not teaching. Another slide. Sir. And we also, because we also developed, we also developed what we call the revision booklets, and 134 at primary, then 26 at secondary. And we developed what we call learner packs. These were the materials which were going with the strategy. The syllabi, still looking at the syllabi, then we tried to compress it to fit the strategy. Then we had critiques. Maybe that is why we even developed the materials to further reinforce our strategy. The critiques were from teacher formations. They were saying, this is not actually the strategy. It's just the teaching methodology. Then you are trying to upgrade it. And they were saying, this strategy of yours is only catering for fast learners, while the other learners, slow learners, will be left forever. Then that is why we developed the revision booklets and the learner packs. The revision booklets were going to be used by the mainstream, while the learner packs are used by the distance learners. Another slide. Oh, please, the last one. Yeah, here I think that was the slogan used by Lesotho when it developed this strategy. Life continues even in times of COVID. So should education. And that is the team of NCDC developing the strategy, in fact, developing the revision booklets and even editing them. That's it. Another one, I think that's the last one. Yes, this one is what we are doing at NCDC at the moment as the vision of NCDC, because we have seen how this strategy worked has done to us. We are developing what we call NCDC LMS. It's hosted within our website. The focus is to teach learners. I think we are familiar with the learning management system. That is where we are also thinking we'll have the advanced intelligence. What do you call that? Yeah. And we have what we call digital library. The digital library is free, emanates free Wi-Fi, is solar powered, can be accessed by 21 at once in range of 1 meters. It can store simulated experiences. Its memory can be, and books, its memory can be expanded. All content will be controlled by NCDC. We are helped to do this. The Peace Corps Lesotho are supplying us with this digital library. I think with that, having pressed by time, thank you very much.
Thank you. And you know, it's exciting, but we have very short time. We're supposed to have 4 presenters, but we had to add on the Lesotho presentation, and I think it has been exciting. A round of applause for all our presenters. So we now come to time to interact with the presenters, and you've seen it's very clear from their presentation. Teachers need support. They know what to do. They may not be doing it. They know what to do. And if they do it, they may not know why they do it. But we've also heard about issues to do with school principals, school leadership. And we've also heard about the gender issues that came out, as well as importance of providing remedial classes. And of course, this final presentation about strategies that were adopted to ensure learning during COVID time. We would like to be a bit organized, and so I'm going to ask those who have questions for the first presenter. We'll only take 1 or 2. Any question for Jacqueline? There is 1, 1, 2. Please ask. I start with you. Not it down.
Thank you so much, moderator, for the recognition. My name is Edwin Kadara Myers. I'm from Liberia and work with the Ministry of Education. My question is a general question. So I'm just going to ask the question 1. But I want to extend my thanks to all the presenters for the excellent deliverable. We hope that we take away some key points and recommendations that will help to effect our governance system. What else do you think you could have captured during your research, but you didn't? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a general question. I think any of the presenters will react to it, but later. Second question for Jacqueline.
Thank you very much. My name is Alfred Chilala from Zambia. I'm from Teacher Education Department and Teacher Education Specialized Services, Zonal In-Service Coordinator. My question to Jacqueline is, based on her presentation on focus to improve teacher support, I wish to find out, in view of the inconsistencies that have been encountered during the research, in terms of carrying out or rather implementing the methodology, the TAO methodology. My question is, what measures do you think can be put in place in order to have these teachers are supported by the school administration in order to yield the desired learning outcomes within the specified period of time? I submit.
Thank you very much. Questions for Bernadette, and we're taking only 2. Questions for Bernadette? If we don't have, we move to the next. Questions for Belize? Questions for Belize? Okay. We don't have? No? Let's then take questions for Richard. about school managers? Any question? And finally, questions for Edwin, the last presentation. So we have 1, 2. Okay, let's start with the last one there. Yeah.
Bonjour, c'est M. Badjadji, chargé de mission au cabinet du ministre de l'Éducation nationale de la Mauritanie. Moi, j'ai beaucoup apprécié la conclusion de M. Richard quand il dit qu'on doit passer de leadership individuel au leadership collectif. Ce n'est pas une question, c'est plutôt une recommandation ou bien un constat. Nous, au niveau de la Mauritanie, nous avons déjà initié des écoles, le comité de gestion des écoles, le COGES. Bon, ce sont des comités qui sont gérés par aussi bien les directeurs des écoles que l'association des parents d'élèves, les enseignants, la commune. Donc, cette expérience nous a permis de révolutionner la gestion au niveau des écoles. Nous l'avons entamé au niveau des écoles à cycle complet et nous sommes en train de le faire maintenant, de les généraliser au niveau des écoles à cycle incomplet. Je pense que d'ici l'année prochaine, ce sera généralisé. Je reviens un peu, s'il vous plaît, Madame la Présidente, sur l'intervention de Madame Bernadette. Je recommande à ce que nous partagions cette étude avec tous les pays du G5 Sahel qui vont se rencontrer très bientôt à l'occasion d'un atelier qui sera organisé avec l'appui de l'UNESCO et de l'Union européenne. Comme vous le savez, sans doute, les pays du G5 Sahel travaillent en étroite collaboration dans le domaine de l'éducation. Et ce sera l'occasion de partager cette étude. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. That was a comment. We had a hand up here as well. Question.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Fatou Jassé from the Gambia. I have a question for the last presenter. As an curriculum developer, going through your presentation, I learned that the curriculum was compressed because of time. You were not able to teach these children everything that was found in the curriculum. Now, did you do any assessment to compare the results of the students that passed through the curriculum that was compressed with the students that passed through the normal curriculum?
Thank you. Clear question. I hope I haven't left anybody. I like to come back on this side. There's another hand. Okay, please go ahead.
My name is Adam from Somalia, National Education Coalition. I have one question for the last presentation regarding for the teachers. In his presentation, he showed that there were a teacher strike in 2018 and 2019. My question is, what was behind the reason why teachers were on strike? And in case there is a strike, the government had the government solved this kind of situation. And following, there was 2020, COVID-19, and 2021. Still the problem is still existing, or is there any change? What solution is as a civil society group is in your country have you made yourself? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll now respond to those questions. Jacqueline will respond to the question that was addressed to her. The general question can be picked on by any of the presenters. And then Tolese will also respond to his question. So Jacqueline, you're starting.
Great. So the question that was asked was what measures can be put in place for better teacher support? And as I was thinking about the answer, I grouped them into before we even implement the program, while we implement, and post-implementation. And before implementing, I think one of the key strategies to employ, and we are working to do the same in Côte d'Ivoire as we think about scale up, is better alignment on roles and responsibilities at the school level. I think there's an expectation that you're in a school, you're passionate about teaching and education, you'll do what it takes to improve learner outcomes. But teachers and other school officials have a lot of tasks that they're doing at the school level already, even before you bring your program. So I think better alignment to understand what do you do on a daily basis, even before we start the TAL methodology, and then who can take on the additional responsibility and be better mentor support. That is one critical area. And we even saw this in Côte d'Ivoire, where principals, where the head teachers are meant to be mentors for teachers, but then they came and told us that they're happy to be mentors, but they're also teachers in most extent. So when they're meant to be giving mentoring support, they're in a class teaching. So now what do we expect them to do? Should they stop teaching and mentor? Should they mentor? And it was very confusing for them. So I think just being realistic and aligning on who can do what is one of the key reasons. The next is better understanding of the program. Everyone wants to improve learner outcomes in any way they can. But I think there's so many programs happening in many schools, and it's not adequate to just assume your program will be accepted and appreciated by all. So I think there should be more awareness and sensitization of what your program looks like, what other programs already exist, and what would matter at the school level about your program, and really focus on honing that which they're more interested in to make sure that everyone really buys into it. So even by the time they're supporting teachers, they know why they're supporting and what they need to do when it comes to supporting. And then last on the pre is better relationship and needs assessment. So there's always an expectation when you're working at the school level, the different officials speak to each other, they have a cordial relationship. But for example, within the TAL methodology, there's a lot of expectation, for example, for teachers to reach out to principals or head teachers to ask them where they have challenges, or the other way around. But for that to happen, there needs to be a very good open relationship between the mentor and the teacher. So really building that even during the training, where they feel open enough to engage and work together. And this doesn't seem like one person is supervising the other and righting all their wrongs, but more of we are working together as partners to make this work for the learner. During implementation, similar to what happens in pre, better task support. Everyone is doing a lot of tasks during program implementation. So I think there needs to be better alignment on who can take on what during the phases of implementation and during things that happen at the school level. For example, if you look at the termly exams, during the term exams, and a teacher also has to do the methodology, and the head teacher is also doing all those two activities plus mentoring. So I think better allocation of tasks during the school term would be great. And then during post implementation, as we think about how the program will learn, more phased implementation. The methodology is great when you understand it, but it takes time to understand each step of the process. So a phased implementation where you take on the first task, make sure everyone has understood it, they're implementing it well, then introduce the next phase. We'll make sure that everyone builds the expertise across and people are not just guessing through and hoping they're doing the right thing in implementing an entire program. And this can be through the mentors being given assignment. For example, this month focus on assessment. So they're in schools helping teachers understand how to do assessment, carry them out, and just make sure they've learned that skill. Then the next month, it could be focusing on grouping. How do you do grouping? So making the implementation phase-wise to ensure that both the teacher and the mentor are focusing on one thing at a time and making sure that everyone has built that capacity. And then lastly is use of data. We always emphasize that let's collect as much data and use as much data at the school level. But do people understand the data? Do they receive the data? Do they know what to do with the data? So I think building capacity at the school level for people to understand, what does this data mean to you? If you've done assessment and this is the output shows most of your children, for example, are at beginner where maybe they recognize only letters. What does that mean for a teacher? What does that mean for a mentor? So unpacking how and what data is used for would be essential in making sure that teachers are supported the way they need to be supported. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to the question.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that was a spot on question, and brilliant to have spotted that I did not talk to the assessment at all in my presentation. Let me start there. Actually, there was an assessment strategies developed for this strategy, assessment methods. They were developed together with the revision booklets and the learner packs. It's only that I missed that, and I'm happy that you spotted that. I did not talk to it. Coming to your question, are there assessment now? There were assessment before and after the ATL strategy. The thing is, when I start here, I said there are activities which we have done already, but the strategy is ongoing. There are activities which we are still doing now. One of the activities which we are doing now in the strategy is that one of assessment and comparing results. Just like as you have said, my colleagues, senior management at NCDC, while I was coming here, they were out going to schools. They are going to schools. Actually, there were examinations given to sampled schools. These examinations are given after we have taught them with accelerated teaching and learning with the strategy. And another thing which was our intention was to look at how now learners, the schools are performing after they were given teacher assistant. Those whom I said at primary, they were 220, and at secondary, they were that number. Whom I said they are doing the remedials are not teaching. The intention is to see how the schools are performing now that they are given teacher assistant. And the performance will be, we'll check how they are performing after now they are given the teacher assistant. And it will be compared with how they were performing before that. And before that is when they were using the normal curriculum. Hope I have answered.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir asked the reason of teacher strikes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think
can I come
my
in
CEO is helping me there.
Can I come in, moderator?
If you allow me.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Mafubi Galengwan. I am indeed the Chief Education Officer responsible for curriculum and assessment in Lesotho. Just before I get to the teacher's question, I just want to point out to those present in here that our system is built such that it's self-evaluating itself as we progress. What our colleague has just said to you is that he was just testing whether the ministry strategy has worked. And I think in other words, he has said it has worked, and they are now implementing its recommendation. So, but the element of teacher strikes just came in as a background. He was just emphasizing the situation that we were in that ended up forcing the ministry having to strategize against. The strategy was actually against the loss of continuity of learning. However, we are not reluctant to respond to that. Yes, we did have those many teacher strikes, which are now a little bit subsided. One reason being that we had to develop what has been called new career salary and career structure, which all sides, teachers and their organizations seem to be content with. I think I have covered all, unless if there's one part of the question that is remaining. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now have a quick response to the general question from the people on my right in 1 minute each.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be as quick as possible. And responding to the question about what could we have captured during the research that we didn't? Maybe what I didn't have much time to mention during the presentation was that we did extensive research in 2019, 2020, 2021, and right now, as I'm here, my colleagues are on the field collecting more data. So we've talked to teachers, to school leaders, to students, we did assessments with them, we interviewed them, we talked with teachers, we did assessments with them. And I think it's quite extensive data that we're not done analyzing even. So, but there is a lot of articles that we have online on our website. But what we can do as well is do more of going back to the field and sharing those results with research participants, in our cases, teachers and school leaders, because they are very generous with their time. They have lots to do, but still they sit with us and share with us information that is key to the implementation of the initiative I was talking about. And the last piece of our whole work on this initiative in terms of being a learning partner will be to go and sit with all the implementing partners as well as the funders and see what could have been done differently and what could be improved in the next iteration of the initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. In a minute.
Thank you. Oui, ce que nous aurions pu capturer dans notre recherche, disons, correspond à la réalité des gestionnaires qui ne sont pas membres de notre réseau. Donc, nous sommes conscients que les gens qui participent à nos activités sont des gens qui sont engagés dans leur formation et donc les résultats de notre recherche sont conditionnés par ce fait-là. Il serait intéressant d'être capable d'avoir une vision globale, par exemple, de la formation des gestionnaires dans l'ensemble des gestionnaires dans un certain pays. Et c'est un travail que nous allons faire avec nos associations nationales. Deuxième chose, c'est qu'à l'intérieur de notre réseau, parce que nous voulons avoir une vision systémique de la gestion, nous travaillons avec des directeurs locaux, avec des inspecteurs, avec des directeurs régionaux, avec des directeurs centraux. La recherche que nous avons conduite ne nous a pas permis de distinguer justement les réponses selon les niveaux de responsabilité des gestionnaires. Et ça aussi, c'est un travail que nous allons faire à l'avenir. Merci.
Thank you, and lastly, Bernadette.
Ce que nous aurions dû faire et que nous n'avons pas pu dans le cadre de notre recherche, c'est la vérification de la pérennisation des acquis au niveau stratégique. Nous aurons pu analyser la pérennité des acquis stratégiques par un post-test différé lointain ou par les devoirs après un long temps de l'arrêt de la remédiation. Ce qui reste une limite pour cette étude et en même temps une perspective pour la suite de nos travaux. Pourquoi pas dans une étude longitudinale ultérieure. Merci.
Thank you, Bernadette. This also brings us to the end of our breakaway session. And I think you have heard from the different presenters the research that is going on around teacher support. We all realize that it's important to actually provide support to the teachers if they are to perform effectively the roles that are expected of them. So once again, thank you to our presenters and thank you to the audience.